Boy, you could kind of give them a mulligan for what happened against Tennessee and say it's a one-off and they'll fix it, and there was a lot of good in that game. But after watching what I saw against Minnesota without Dalvin Cook, wow. And when you look at this team right now, there is plenty of blame to go around. What is in bigger trouble right now, Seattle's offense or their defense?
Their defense, I think. I just think it starts with getting off the field, right? And yeah, your offense has to sustain drives in the second half to keep your defense on the sidelines. But right now, it's somebody has to break the cycle. But if I had an area of concern with the Seahawks team, look at their defense the last two halves against Tennessee, also against Minnesota. I mean, Madison running for 112 yards on 26 attempts. Right now, that defense has too many players, I think, that are looking around and hoping someone else makes the play. Maybe Bobby Wagner makes the play. You have to be that player that makes the play. And I think the other thing, too, it's trust. Right? To me, that's the other issue when you look at teams in these type of situations. Start trusting your teammates. Trust the system. Go out there, just as Belichick would say, do your job.
I look at this right now, and I think the problems are on both sides of the ball because, as you mentioned, they also have to sustain some drives offensively, and they've got to find a way to make some adjustments because offensively, this team didn't get a point in the second half in the last game. This season, they have combined for 13 offensive points in the second half. That speaks to Shane Waldron not being able to make adjustments at halftime, in my opinion. But teams are figuring them out. They had just one possession in the third quarter in this last game. They've got to get better, and they haven't been able to protect Russell Wilson. He was pressured on 18 of his 37 dropbacks in the last game, so I don't think the offense can absolve themselves of any of the problems, but defensively, both those running backs in the second half, they were over 100 yards in the second half of both of those games. They're just running it down their throats at that point.
42 yards of offense. Take away the last drive, which was meaningless. I think they got like 39 yards. But 42 yards of offense in the second half. How about the time of possession? 22 minutes and change for the Vikings. Seahawks had it for 7 minutes and change. That's all you need to know right there.
We knew the cornerback situation was a real problem. I mean, it was throughout training camp. They were trying to figure out what was going to happen there. They brought in Witherspoon. They got rid of Witherspoon. Now they've traded for Sidney Jones. In all likelihood, he's going to start this week in place of Trey Flowers. I don't think that's enough to get it done. And talking to Flowers after the game, he said, yeah, there's a bit of confusion right in here with our defense. He said, it's a schematic thing. I feel like I've got my own questions to ask. Said there's confusion among some guys on how to defend certain routes. So Pete Carroll addressed this afterwards. Are the players and the coaches defensively, in terms of their pass defense, on the same page?
Well, I'll say this. If you
we got to hear from Pete Carroll.
If you have players, you want to hear from Pete Carroll now?
No, I want to hear from the Moj.
Okay. I'll say this. When you have players that are confused about what they're doing, you got to dumb it down. You have to dumb it down to the point where players can play with aggression, where they can play with confidence. If you have players that are thinking what to do on the field, now you have paralysis by analysis, and as a result, it takes away from the aggression. Dumb it down. That's what a good coach will do. He'll dumb it down and say, hey, okay, we're going to make this simple, but just play with aggression.
Let's hear what Pete Carroll has to say.
No, we can always challenge. Our guys there is freedom in our scheme. There always has been for them to, when they're playing up and back and on the line of scrimmage and that, and they have to make choices, depending on the situation and the call and the split and all of that. And so we work with them though. We'll coach them up during the course of a game. We'll coach them up, in prep for a week. How we want to do it, but they have some freedom there. Probably.
Yeah, I don't think you want to give them that level of freedom at this stage, right? No. When you've got guys that haven't necessarily, they're not elite players, right? Like when Richard Sherman was his heyday, yeah, you give him some freedom. You want to go up and play press, go play press. You want to play off man, play off man. Like be aggressive, do your thing. But these guys are not proven entities. Right now, quarterback's completion percentage, 70.7, which is 26 in the league. Passer rating right now, quarterbacks playing the Seahawks, 108.4. They're one of just 4 teams without an interception right now, and they don't know what they're doing with Jamal Adams. I mean, here's a guy who showed what he was capable of doing last year, so much so in terms of pass rush and playing close to the box. You wanted to be paid like an outside linebacker. You paid him big money, and now you've got him playing in deep off zone and covering guys on crossing routes. What are you doing?
We were talking with our good friend Ian Furness on our Seahawk pregame show, and every week he talks to Greg Cosell from NFL Films. And you nailed it, and that's what Greg talked about. He said, right now the Seahawks are trying to figure out how to best utilize Jamal Adams. You're paying him all this money, and all of a sudden with Adams, he's kind of like all over the map. You don't know what's happening with Jamal Adams. So they've got to figure out something there. But I think, again, for me, if I'm the Seahawks, I really want to dumb things down and allow these guys to play with aggression. You're right. If you have Sherman and you have Bobby Wagner and you have Chancellor and all these great players, you give them the responsibility, and then you can add all those little nuances and wrinkles. But guess what? If you can't handle the basic responsibility of your assignment, you can't add those wrinkles. You have to show that you can handle your basic responsibilities, and right now the Seahawks aren't even doing that.
Yeah, no, there's no question. And add to that, they've got the third most penalty yardage in the NFL. I mean, this game turned around on that penalty to Amadi, right? When they had him off the field.
Huge.
So
Huge.
they can't afford that when you've got so many other questions between the lines. You don't want to give teams extra downs and extra possessions and extra opportunities because they're just not good enough right now in that area. Now, look, they're 1-2. They've got back-to-back games with San Francisco and the Rams, divisional games. This team cannot go 1-4, which means they must win this week because I don't see them beating the Rams.
I don't even know if they can beat the 49ers right now. I mean, you look at the ways San Fran came back against Green Bay, played a great game in the second half. You know that this 49er team is going to be smarting after losing in the last 37 seconds to the Packers. They're at home. You know that this is going to be a team that's going to go out there and bring everything they got. Man, I could see this team being 1-4 after 5 weeks of play.
Which at that point means the season is officially done or effectively done as far as playoffs are concerned. Who do you like? They're 3-point underdogs in this game?
Take the 49ers. I'm just, what I'm seeing with the Seahawks right now, their inability to finish, the confusion, you're hearing it from players, in terms of not going out there and not knowing what to do sometimes. I got to go with the 49ers.
Yeah, look, I don't think San Francisco is going to put up a big number. I think they're struggling with their running game right now, trying to figure it out. I think they've got questions on the outside at receiver. George Kittle, I think, could be a matchup problem for Seattle, as he has been over the years. I do think Seattle can keep this close, but the way they're working out on both sides of the ball, I just don't see enough plays being made where they're going to find a way to win this game or even cover it, a 3-point game. I think San Francisco finds a way to win, maybe by a touchdown, and at that point, Seattle's going to be in a world of hurt trying to stem the tide against a team like the Rams. So we'll see. But this is a really, really critical game for Seattle, given how early it is in the season. Do not overstate the importance of this game.
The Seahawks have come back from bad starts in the past. They have. I mean, you look through their history, there have been some slow starts with these Seahawks teams. But if you go 1-4, to me, that's not a slow start. That's a mountain you got to climb out of. And you're in an extremely tough division in the NFC West.
So now here's the other thing. The Seahawks have never lost 3 consecutive games in the Russell Wilson era. The only time Pete Carroll lost 3 consecutive games as Seahawks head coach was before Russell Wilson arrived. So it's been a while. This would be a historical type of situation for this era of Seahawks players if they actually wind up losing this game.
Could be a historical weekend in San Francisco. Just saying.
There you go.